Let's bring in Anna Shternshis, professor of Yiddish studies at the University of Toronto. Professor, thank you for being here today.
Thank you for inviting me.
So let me start with this. Why is it important to keep the Holocaust at the forefront of our collective memories?
Well, we just saw in the clip, the massive scale of violence during the Holocaust is something that nobody wants to live through again. Some of the most vulnerable victims of the Holocaust were children, usually under the age of 5 and younger, and older people. The violence against civilians that took place during World War II against Jewish civilians, people with disability, and others targeted those who really could not defend themselves. And societies have to work really hard to ensure that the most vulnerable are protected. Every story of survival during the Holocaust is a story of a miracle, as survivors just said. And it's not just a turn of words. Somebody was rescued by someone was hiding. Somebody's parents paid everything to keep them alive. Some stories of survival of Holocaust include stories of parents sacrificing themselves, their grandparents, other siblings, so only one person can leave. No human being should ever leave through these kind of experiences. And it is also important that a lot of people who died during the Holocaust never got to tell their story, and they were hoping that one day the world will know it, and they really didn't want those sufferings to be forgotten. And I think the fact that we commemorate the Holocaust either on the day of Auschwitz liberation or on other occasions, this is a tribute to their memory as well, and it's honoring them and also honoring us, understanding that we are hoping to live in a society where this kind of violence will not be repeated.
Tell me about the historical significance of observing January 27th as International Holocaust Remembrance Day.
Yeah, so it's interesting to find a good date to commemorate during, when it comes to Holocaust history, because so many dates are associated with destruction. But liberation of Auschwitz, which was conducted, by the way, by the Red Army, right, the Soviet Army, is something that we all agree was a good thing and saved lives and liberated people imprisoned there. But it's also interesting how in today's world, when we think about what is the Soviet Army or post-Soviet Army doing now, right? So we are commemorating the day when the Red Army liberated Auschwitz, but are we able to say that armies today are only doing liberation? But it gives us an opportunity to think about what does that even mean that centers such Auschwitz, killing centers existed where killing people was on massive scale. I think it also gives us an opportunity to think about places during the Holocaust where people were dying on such massive scale that nobody even noticed their death. For example, if we think about places like, ghetto of Bershit in Ukraine, where people were dying from starvation, from cold, from diseases, and they were not always shot or put in gas chambers. And what we learn from survivors is that when a person witnesses a death on such mass scale, for example, children, the parents would die and they would sleep with those dead bodies for days because the bodies were not removed from them, and they would live with this situation also of losing their parents, their families, but also not having any empathy for their suffering. A lot of survivors are talking about the fact that there was so much death, including death of family members, of community members, of friends, that it was very hard to register death as something extraordinary, something that required compassion. And I think the Holocaust Memorial Day is an opportunity to really think about what happens to society, what happens to all of us when these kind of conversations happen. And it is really important, I think, to think about and to discuss the fact that all this was happening to people and conducted by people. Even those images that we see on the screen right now, they're sites, they're fences, they're buildings, there are no people in them. And these these are reminders that so many people who inhabited those places, were imprisoned there, they're gone. And it is on us to keep their stories relevant, and also their stories not forgotten.
All right. Anna Shternshis, professor of Yiddish studies at the University of Toronto. We thank you very much for your time today. All the best.
Thank you so much for having me and for covering this story.